We're mere days away from the return of the club football season, and man, I can't wait. Welcome to the Always Bayern Chelsea show, everybody. Recording this one here on Wednesday, October 15th. Hope to have it posted tomorrow, Thursday. But yeah, let's go in and break down the upcoming matches because it's a huge one for Bayern Munich. Klassiker against Dortmund in the Bundesliga. Really looking forward to that. Dortmund seems to be Bayern's biggest challenger this year. And Chelsea against Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. Jim and I are kind of on different schedules right now again this week, so we're doing this separately, but I'm hopefully going to have a Forest preview from Jim that I'll edit right on into this one. Please subscribe if you are new to the Always Bayern Chelsea YouTube channel. Like, comment, all that good stuff. We're going to be building a footballing community of fans, and it's just awesome to talk to people in the comments and get that going. So really big appreciation to everybody who has subscribed so far and gotten us to 300 subscribers. That's awesome. So thank you very much. And yeah, I'm going to be giving you the Bayern Munich Dortmund Klassiker preview. So let's just jump into it right here. This match is taking place on Saturday, October 18th, so pretty early on in the season. I believe this is the 7th round of the Bundesliga, and the big one is already here. But yeah, it's going to be 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. You know, we're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin here, so kind of running on Central Standard Time, but obviously different times all around the globe, and that's the cool thing about the beautiful game, I guess. Yeah, this one's going to be at the Allianz Arena, home for Bayern Munich, and I'm just pumped about it because Bayern Munich has been a buzzsaw, quite frankly. They're perfect so far this year. Vincent Kompany has the squad humming, 10 matches and 10 wins, but let's take a look here at the table. Let's be honest, you don't have to look very far down the table to find either one of these teams. You have Bayern Munich at first with, I believe, 18 points, but let me just double check that. Yep, 18 points. Again, 6 for 6, a plus 22 goal differential, which is wild. Dortmund is in second place with 14 points through 6 matches played with a plus 8 goal differential. So Dortmund's having a good year. They've been consistent. Obviously, Bayern Munich has just been a juggernaut, but Dortmund has been consistent under head coach Niko Kovac. Dortmund has been really a roller coaster of a team the last couple of years in terms of ping-ponging back and forth between different styles, different managers. Nuri Sahin, Terzic, obviously, very different styles. I think Sahin was trying to get Dortmund to play a little bit more on the front foot, a little bit more aggressive, and then Kovac is more pragmatic. He's a manager who I think plays a little bit more conservatively, a little bit more heavy on discipline, things like that. So we'll see what this Dortmund team is really made of, I guess, and how long they can keep Kovac as a manager, because right now things are working out. And if things continue this way, I'm sure Kovac will stay for a while. But again, like, it's Dortmund. You never know when shit's going to hit the fan. I'll try to say that as respectfully as I possibly can as a Bayern Munich fan. But yeah, it is what it is. Dortmund fans, sound off in the comments, I guess, if you disagree. I seriously would love to have a conversation, but that's just how I feel. Maybe looking in from the outside a little bit as a Bayern Munich fan. But this year, really no complaints, I don't think, with Dortmund's form. Let's take a look at some recent matches here for Dortmund, but you know, they've been solid. You got the last match was, I know, that 1-1 draw against Leipzig, and then before that they did have a very, very dominating good Champions League 4-1 win over Athletic Club Bilbao. Embarrassing Nico Williams and co, I guess. But yeah, then back in the Bundesliga, they beat Mainz 2-0, beat Wolfsburg 1-0, had a wild Champions League draw against Juventus 4-4 after going up early in that one and really, really blowing it at the very end. Multiple stoppage time goals from Juventus in that one. And then yeah, they beat Heidenheim 2-0, beat Union Berlin 3-0. So you can see that Dortmund is they're rolling, maybe not super convincingly in terms of like goal differential, but they're rolling, they're winning. And actually their opening match of the year was a 1-1 draw against St. Pauli. Shout out to St. Pauli. You know why I love you, but shout out to you, St. Pauli, for getting that 1-1 draw against Dortmund. First match of the year, but since then, I mean, yeah, Dortmund's been looking good. They really have been. And again, I think Dortmund's going to be Bayern's biggest challenger. I predicted them to finish second in the table. Still believe that. Still believe that Dortmund will just be the most consistent team in the Bundesliga outside of the big red Bavarian Giants, of course. So yeah, let me just take a look here through Dortmund's squad. We're going to just talk about different, attackers, midfielders, defenders, whatever, keeper. And we'll talk about some of the players just because Dortmund has a lot of guys that you would know. If you're a Bundesliga fan, of course, but even if you're just a regular old football fan, I think you would recognize a lot of these names because Dortmund certainly does have a lot of very solid guys. So as far as the attackers go, I mean, you got Serhou Guirassy as their striker. He's actually injured. He left the international duty over the international break. He left his national team and returned to Dortmund. But it sounds like he's going to play. I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't play based off of reports that I've been hearing. But Serhou Guirassy is a beast. He is one of the best strikers in the Bundesliga for sure, and maybe even one of the better strikers in the world. Just a great athletic talent, a very, very strong goal-scoring threat up there on top. I'm going through SofaScore here. Some of these guys are listed as forwards, like Karim Adeyemi. He plays a lot of wing, so I guess I'll list him here as an attacker. Very good. Got a lot of minutes for the German national team lately. Adeyemi is always a guy who's liable to pop off. I think he's not always hot, I'll say that, but when he is, he's very good. He's very quick, hard to defend. Maximilian Bayer, another great attacking player for Dortmund. And then we move on into the midfield here, and a lot of guys in the midfield that you would recognize. The midfield, I think, is Dortmund's biggest strength, and I think they have a solid attack. I think they have a solid defense and a solid keeper, but I do think that the midfield is actually their biggest strength. So let's run through some of these names. Job Bellingham, of course, brother of Jude Bellingham. Not the exact same player as Jude. Obviously, Jude did so much for Dortmund. Job, not so much so far, but he's so young and has a lot of time to kind of blossom into a star or just a really solid player, I guess. And also, we got a Chelsea connection here. Former Chelsea player Carney Chukwuemeka is also a Dortmund player now. He's been, he wasn't great on Chelsea, but he's been very good so far for Dortmund. Julian Brandt, of course, another German player, maybe a little bit overhyped as a youngster, but at this point, he's having a nice year, if I recall correctly. Marcel Sabitzer, of course, Pascal Gross, Felix Nemecha, Daniel Svensson. I mean, there's just so many very, very good players here. And, some of these guys are a little more attacking. Some of these guys are a little more defensive. So there's just a lot of players listed in this midfield category here. But again, a lot of names that you would know. Sabitzer, obviously, former Bayern Munich. A lot of, like, Pascal Gross is a German national team guy. So there's just a lot of really solid players. What can you say? And moving on now to defense, Niko Schlotterbeck he's been in the news a lot because he is certainly one of the best center backs in Germany, trying to push into that like upper tier center backs in Europe, in my opinion. And he's been in the news because he's been linked to Bayern Munich, and I would love it. I would love nothing more than Niko Schlotterbeck on Bayern Munich. I really do rate him. I think he's great, and I think he's the kind of player that is really just what Bayern Munich needs, to be honest with you. You got, who else? You got Emre Can is injured right now, so he won't be in this one, but another, mainstay, I guess you could say. Niklas Süle, we will always recall him, of course, at Bayern Munich. Never maybe reached his full potential, but he's been having a nice, I guess you could call it a little bit of a renaissance maybe at Dortmund, and Waldemar Anton. So again, just a number of really solid players on this Dortmund team. And goalkeeper Gregor Kobel is for sure one of the best goalkeepers in Germany. Manuel Neuer is the GOAT. Manuel Neuer is the best. But outside of Neuer, you're probably looking at Kobel as the next best, at least in my opinion. So yeah, let's now look at Bayern Munich again. I mentioned top of the table, 18 points, undefeated. I mean, they're undefeated in the Champions League as well, beating Paphos and beating Chelsea. Sorry, Jim. And also their DFB Pokal first round matchup against Vehan Wiesbaden was a win, and Dortmund also won their first round Pokal match. Can't remember who it was against, but it was a low scoring game, 1-0, I do believe. So yeah, Bayern Munich, their most recent matches, win against Frankfurt, if you remember, another very good Bundesliga team. Bayern shut them out and won 3-0. They got that win against Paphos, and then 4-0 against Bremen and 4-1 against Hoffenheim. And then before that, you had Chelsea, and the list goes on and on. But yeah, Bayern Munich, I talked about it a lot. I actually just released a State of the Season address for Bayern Munich where I did talk about their entire form up until this October international break. So maybe check that one out if you want to get a more detailed look into my noggin when it comes to thought process for how Bayern Munich's been lately. But the short of it is incredible. Very good, playing like one of the best, if not the best teams in all of Europe so far. And I look for Bayern to continue that against Dortmund, especially at home. Some of these guys are going to be maybe a little banged up, like Kane has that knock on his ankle, but coming off the international break, you might see a little bit of proverbial jet lag, I guess. But I think that Bayern Munich can't be stopped right now, and I'm not going to be the one to bet against them right now. That's for sure. Until they, I guess, give me a reason to, I'm not going to be the one who's going to be negative about them, because I think they've just been so good. So let me run down what I think Vincent Kompany's starting lineup is going to be, and then I'll get to some predictions, which is maybe the reason you're all here. Who knows? Maybe not, though. Maybe you just want to hear everything, of course. And maybe you'll comment, and maybe you'll like and subscribe. But yeah, starting lineup, I think it's going to be Neuer in between the sticks. Erbig seems to be making a recovery from his injury, but I don't know if he's 100% yet. Even if he was, I don't ever see Neuer seeding this match, let's be honest. I don't see him seeding very many matches, this one especially. The backline is a little bit interesting because of the injury to Josip Stanisic. He was not with Croatia over the international break, and I'm not sure if he's going to be healthy for this one. I don't believe he was in training today. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on him. He's more of a day-to-day type case, but I don't think he's going to play in this one. So my gut is telling me Sasha Bouet is going to be starting at right back, and Konrad Laimer is going to be over at left back. Jack of all trades, Connie Laimer is going to be over at left back. That's what my gut's telling me. I think the center back combination is going to be Dayot Upamecano and Jonathan Tah. I think those are Kompany's 1-2. Kim has been injured, but also played 90 minutes every match for South Korea. So, you know how Kim is. He'll play when he's injured, and it is what it is. Moving on to the midfield. There's a little bit of some guesswork, I guess you could say, in terms of who I think is going to start in the midfield. One of the midfield positions. One of them will be Kimmich. Kimmich always plays, so he'll be there in the midfield. And then the other position, you could go, I guess there's an outside chance you could go Bischoff, but probably not. And then it's most likely going to be between Goretzka and Pavlovic. I think Kompany's going to go with Pavlovic. He seems to be favoring him so far as the number one, or I guess number two, but number one partner with Joshua Kimmich, if that makes sense. Number two overall behind Kimmich. And Pavlovic had been injured, but when he's been healthy, he's mostly been in the lineup. So I'm going to go with Alexander Pavlovic. As far as the attack, I think it's going to be chalk. I think it's going to be as standard goes for Vincent Kompany, meaning we're going to see Michael Olise on the right wing, Serge Gnabry at that 10 position, Luis Diaz at the left wing, and Harold Edward Kane at the 9. Now, Kane had a great international break, a brace for England, saw them qualify for the World Cup. Kimmich had a great international break, a really good match against Luxembourg. But again, a lot of these guys were in action. All of our attackers were. Diaz for Colombia, also Jackson. Shout out to Jackson. He won't probably play much in this one. Olise and Upamecano for France. Gnabry for Germany, Pavlovic, Kimmich for Germany, Ta for Germany, and then Leimer for Austria. So yeah, a lot of the guys got some work in over the break. I mentioned Kim too. Maybe I missed someone. Who knows? But let's get down to it. Let's get down to my prediction for this one. I'm picking Bayern Munich. If you, I don't know, if you caught on to it, I'm not going to bet against this train that is Bayern Munich until it starts to slow down, maybe. And maybe even then I'll keep being positive because I just think they're, an absolutely just a powerhouse right now. I think they're unstoppable. So I'm going Bayern Munich 3-1. I do think Dortmund's good. I said it. I do think Dortmund's good, but not good enough to beat the Bavarians. 3-1 Bayern. I'm going to go with a Harry Kane goal, a Michael Olise goal, and how about a Serge Gnabry goal to round it off? And, I think Dortmund will hold Bayern close enough for a lot of the match where it's sort of in reach, but maybe not really. I don't think Bayern's going to blow them out. So 3-1. And we'll see a crack somewhere in the back line for Dortmund's goal. I think that's probably going to wrap things up for me right here. I'll send it over to Jim to talk about Chelsea and Nottingham Forest and Mia San Mia.
What is up? I'm here to talk Chelsea versus Nottingham Forest. We got an early one, the first Premier League match of this week. Match day 8 in the Premier League in 2025. It's going to be a fascinating one because we've had so many international breaks, and Chelsea are in a place right now where they're pretty injured at this point, but also a lot of guys that have been rested finally over this international break. So it should be a good one, should be very interesting. Nottingham Forest, as we know, has been going through managers like no one else. They have Ange now at this point, sitting 17th in the Premier League. Chelsea sitting 7th. And they're playing at the City Ground in Nottingham. And that's what makes this all the more interesting because they're desperate for a win. But I think Chelsea are also desperate for a win at this point. Chelsea are in a place where they've lost some games, drawn some games where they maybe thought they could do better. They've had a red card situation. They're hungry. Nottingham Forest, on the other hand, last year they have this awesome season. They're riding high, slipped toward the end, and now they're falling off a cliff. They start in 17th at this point, and things are looking a little rough for them. So I'm very interested to see how this match will go. I don't want to say it's a must-win for Chelsea. Way too early for that, but I really do think Chelsea need a win to make things great for them going forward into this month of October. But I want to start with the recent history of Forest and Chelsea head-to-head because it's important to note that these teams have had a lot of competitive matches of late. We know that they ended last year playing against each other on that 38th match day. And Chelsea were able to come out with a huge victory, 1-0. You had a Levi Colwill goal late in that second half that ended up securing Chelsea a Champions League spot, and that was huge. They also drew 1-1 last season back in October. They won against Forest, Chelsea did, the prior year, late in the season as well, 3-2, and then Forest beat them 2 years ago, 1-0 in the beginning of the year. So, as you can see, there's been some competitive matches, things have been close. Forest has kind of had a little bit of an edge on Chelsea compared to their history. So, that I think is interesting as well. But we'll see what happens because this could be a completely new Forest team under Ange. It's not the exact team that they have been. So, Forest recent form, though. Let's talk about that because they just lost to Newcastle in their last Premier League match. They lost in the Europa League. Then they lost to Sunderland in the Premier League, even though they pretty much dominated that match. I watched the entire second half, and it was a complete domination. Kind of got unlucky. They drew in the Europa League to Real Betis. They drew to Burnley. They lost to Swansea. Lost to Arsenal. Lost to West Ham. Forest have not had a win since looks like August 17th, which would have been the first Premier League match against Brentford. That's insane to me that Forest really is just struggling that much. And that to me tells me that Chelsea need to come playing strong, playing on the front foot, because Forest are having tough moments right now. You take advantage of Liverpool when they're vulnerable, when they're maybe not playing their best. Chelsea beat them. Now you need to do the same to Forest. And talking then about Chelsea's current form, you beat Liverpool, you beat Benfica, and then before that you have a rough stretch where you lose to Brighton, you beat Lincoln, but it's the Carabao Cup, you lose to United, you lose to Bayern, you draw Brentford, and all these red cards that have come out. You got the Sanchez red card against Man United, you got the Chalobah red card against Brighton, you even got the João Pedro double yellow into a red against Benfica in the Champions League. And then let's not forget, Enzo Maresca technically gets a red card, a second yellow, against Liverpool, celebrating that second goal at the last second there, Estevao. So it's been quite the ride for Chelsea at this point. So I'm hoping that they can kind of relax, take things slower, really come as a team to beat Forest on this match day. And if we talk about the Chelsea team that potentially could face Forest here, I think it's going to be interesting to see what Maresca does with his lineup because, let's start with that back line. You got Reece James, picked up a knock before international break, doesn't play for England, so he's been resting. Achimpong played for England's U21s. Will he be the guy? Benoit Badiashile, we know he had a slight injury against Liverpool, but will he be ready? We'll see. Chalobah, I don't think will be back. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please comment if I'm wrong. But I think it was a straight red, so he has to miss at least 2 matches, so I think he'll still be out. And then he got Marc Cucurella, who actually did get rested in one of Spain's matches over this break, so that's huge as well. If I'm Maresca, I'm rolling with Sanchez as my keeper, and then Cucurella, Badiashile, Achimpong, and Reece James if he is healthy. And that's what I would roll with. If not Reece James, because you want to save him for the match against Ajax, or if he's just not healthy enough, maybe you throw Gusto in there and hope for the best there. But that, I think, is a pretty good lineup. And then you got Caicedo, who was rested over this break because he had gotten a red for Ecuador. They kind of just decided that they were going to rest him, and so he's going to be ready to go. Enzo Fernandez picked up a knock for Argentina, so we'll see what happens there. Is Lavia healthy in the midfield? Santos, we know he's injured. When is he going to come back? So I think there's decisions that do need to be made by Enzo Maresca, and we'll find out who's going to play. And let's just hope guys are fit because you never know for sure. And if we move to the attack then, I think Garnacho likely to start on that left wing. He's been training at Cobham, doesn't go out to international break with Argentina. Neto, who plays for Portugal, but, let's be honest, he's a great candidate to start on the right wing. Estevao did play one match for Brazil. I think got a little bit into the second match as well, but, rumors that he had the flu as well, so you never know with him. We'll see what happens there. João Pedro, great for him to finally get the rest that he deserves. Will he start at the 9, 10? Buonanotte, what's up with him? Mark Guiu. Jamie Gittins has looked good for England, the U21s over the break. Tyreek George, you could argue as well, scored a banger of a goal off an assist from Gittins. So it's going to be interesting to see where Maresca goes. I think he can go a lot of different ways. In the midfield, I'd go Caicedo and Lavia if he's healthy. And then you're hoping he can play 60 minutes. And Enzo, a little bit of a knee injury, maybe he comes on late. That's what I would do. In the attack, I'm going Garnacho on the left, João Pedro in the 10, Estevao, right wing, and I'm going Guiu up top. I just think I need to see what Mark Guiu can do with João Pedro in this attack. We know that Pedro isn't at his strongest position really as a true main striker there, and that's nothing against him. I think he has a lot of qualities that can be that type of player in that role, but we know that he plays better at times as the second striker. So I think you put in Guiu, have him press, have him make runs, do a lot of the little things, the fundamentals of the game, and I think you'll bear fruits by doing that. So that's what I would roll with against this Forest team. That's going to really just be looking to probably counter. I know it's Ange, but, I don't necessarily trust what he's going to necessarily do. I don't think it's going to be some crazy Tottenham high line as he had with Spurs at times. So I think that'll be interesting to watch, and we'll see what happens there. Moving to Forest, they got a solid team. Chris Wood hasn't been as good as he was last year, but, Morgan Gibbs-White, Ryan Yates, Elliot Anderson, Nico Williams, Matt Sells, of course, their keeper, has been fantastic. Callum Hudson-Odoi, the former Cobham Academy product. Omari Hutchinson. They got a lot of guys that are absolutely fantastic, and it'll be interesting to see, who's all available for them. I haven't kept up to date with their injuries and current form really that much. I just know they're struggling at this point. But Callum Hudson-Odoi will be itching to get some minutes against his former squad. He has scored against Chelsea, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does it as well. And Chris Wood always seems to have his way with Chelsea center backs. Kenan Acheampong in his youth go up against a Chris Wood and play well. I think he can. We've seen it against John-Philippe Mateta, and he's been able to handle him. So I hope he could do it against a guy like Chris Wood, on this day for Chelsea. Benoit Badiashile as well. He's a guy that I trust against a Chris Wood. So that's what I'm hoping for. Ultimately, these two teams, as I said, will be itching for a win, and it's at Nottingham Forest. And I think I originally was predicting a draw, but I'm feeling more confident as the days have gone by here for Chelsea. I just think with a lot of these guys getting rest over the international break as opposed to playing, they've had time now. Guys are still training back at Cobham. I think things are moving in the right direction after the win against Liverpool and the win against Benfica. Maresca has shown passion, he's shown grit, he's shown energy, and that's all important. The guys will see that, they'll respond to it. These are key things for young guys, and Chelsea have a ton of young guys. When they see their manager go to war for them and show that passion, it's going to be huge. So I think this could lead into some nice momentum for Chelsea. Playing Forest, leading into Ajax, this could all be really good for Chelsea. So I'm hoping for the best. I do think a sneaky bet here to make, a Chelsea win, and a Cucurella goal. We haven't seen that yet this year, but I've been waiting all year for it. I actually put $10 on that bet at plus 1,400, 10 to win 140. So I'm hoping Marc Cucurella scores a goal, and my Chelsea Blues win this one at the City Ground against Nottingham Forest. Let's hope it happens. And yeah, just ready for the Premier League to be back. It's been a nice break. I've really had a nice, refreshing break watching a lot of playoff baseball here in America. It's been nice to be distracted and not have to focus on Chelsea so much. Because let's be honest, it can get toxic at times. And as much as I love Chelsea Football Club, it's good to step away sometimes. So, ready to be back and looking forward to this one Saturday. Up the Chelsea.